Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second webinar session dedicated to the UK local government and healthcare sector. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Edgar and Mark here today as your hosts. During the session, you can submit your questions in the questions tab, and Alex, our solution architect, will answer them as we go. In case we don't have enough time to cover all the questions, there will be a follow-up blog post where those will get covered. The recording of the session will be available on our website and YouTube channel once processed. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Edgar. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Margarita. Hello, everybody. And so a little bit about me. I'm Edgar. I'm a technical consultant at Intelogy. And really what I do is undertake Power Platform projects right from the beginning all the way to the end. So through requirements gathering, design, build, and launch processes. And now a little bit about Mark.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Mark. Most people call me Mark O. I am very, very humbled to be joining the team today to co-present. I am at what they refer to as a technical architect at Microsoft, or a cloud solution architect, and I have the really amazing opportunity of getting to work with partners such as the Intelogy team around really helping them and helping their customers enable the Power Platform and Dynamics.
Thanks, Mark. And so a little bit about Intelogy. Our core main aim at Intelogy is to really maximize the value from your Microsoft stack investments. So whether it's Microsoft 365, Azure, Power Platform, we look to advise with you, build for you, and just really support you in any way possible to extract the maximum value available from your investments. Okay. So for today, our agenda looks as the following. We'll cover off your common organizational challenges, so reasons why we may be looking elsewhere rather than the traditional approaches. We'll provide a bit of a Power Platform overview, touch on some things to consider, and then how to get started. So why are we all here? Essentially is the question. It's because that users may be experiencing certain business challenges or challenges through their working days that they may think to themselves, surely there must be a better way. So they may be completing manual and repetitive processes. There may be processes which are heavily paper-based and may include unnecessary delays for that process to run from its beginning to its end. And that can cause naturally frustration and unnecessary delays. The next point is access to tools. So if it's difficult or challenging to access systems which may be behind a certain virtual network or organizational virtual networks, or whether using legacy systems, or users must use multiple logins for separate services across the organization, including, and also if there's no mobile support for your either access to your data or access to those tools, that can cause friction points within your organization. Data is also another important aspect to touch, because if your data cannot keep its integrity, either through the way you interact with it or the way you analyze it, particularly if you're, for example, spreadsheet centric, so you use spreadsheets for numerous tasks, numerous kind of working mechanisms, things like, less we can say contract registers or task lists, etc. That might create certain challenges and also risks concerning things like duplicate records, data inconsistency, so whether certain information must be required when a certain submission is completed, and just in general data silos. So these are standalone data sources, and therefore connecting them and gaining an organizational wide view becomes really challenging. And also, so if an organization also includes mobile workforces, so not only field workers who may have, for example, site auditors who may require mobile device access to either take pictures, complete reports, checklists on site. Recent changes in world situations have also included the need to provide for mobile workforces working from home. So of course, if your access to your tools and data is challenging, catering to those certain audiences will also be another sticking point to kind of really consider. So you may have also, as an organization, identified things to improve upon, but you just may not be sure with the direction to take them, or kind of how to even get started with it. and of course potentially have resource limitations, so whether it's talent or capacity. And taking all of that into account, it's that manual repetitive process, the data risks, the access will always impact your org-wide insights. So it all depends on how your data is stored, where it's stored, to enable that common view of your organization, its status, your performance statuses, and to ensure your compliance as well. So all of these can be risks and actual frequent everyday challenges that we see as a Microsoft partner across organizations we work with. So the traditional approaches, well, there's a couple. First of all, is the commercial off-the-shelf products. And there's a few main core issues which we can identify for that. So first of all, the solution itself may not exist. It may not, there may be not something out there in the marketplace ready to meet that specific requirement that you may need to address. And if there is a product that meets your requirement to some extent, it may not meet it fully, and you may be forced to either adjust your process to really align yourself with the new product that you may introduce to your organization. Of course, off-the-shelf products are usually standalone products as well, so integration can be challenging, difficult, and also, again, that data siloing will make it more difficult to gain your organizational-wide insights later down in the downstream processes for reflective exercises on your performance. Future requirements is another point. It's rather unlikely that that your business process will remain stagnant. So your business requirements will change over time, and there's no guarantee that the product itself will evolve directly in line with your business requirements. And naturally, all of the above will form a dependence on that certain solution provider and that certain solution. Therefore, if you ever wish to move away from it, or it will prove, again, another barrier of significant cost to even detach yourself from it. And again, all of that dependence is based on the supplier to ensure upkeep, uptime, all that security considerations, and that data is controlled and kind of handled in the correct way by them. So the other alternative was traditional app development. So of course, you would be meeting your full requirements as necessary, but again, that poses its own certain limitations. So you may you may not have the necessary technical expertise within the team to deliver such pieces of technology or develop in such a custom development environment to deliver a solution tailored to your requirements, or you may not just simply have the capacity or ability to devote so many resources just for that, to address that specific business use case. Ground up development also takes up a lot of time and expense. And not only that, it's before you even get started with building the functional features of the applications or whatever solutions you may require, significant upfront time must be invested to counter for any kind of security considerations and compliance measures to make sure people who require access to the data have the access, and also while keeping the people who don't out, but also ensuring that data is looked after and handled appropriately as well. And future updates pose another risk with traditional app development is that you may have a really talented team creating and building this application initially, but then any updates will be just as complex and will require the same level of expertise to keep that application alive and aligned with your ever-changing business requirements. So naturally, these two traditional approaches may leave a bit of a gap in your organization between what you have as business challenges and what you can actually address. So if we look on the chart here, the gray area may be the traditional common use cases where it may be covered off either by off-the-shelf products, or you may have a solution of your own to cover certain business-focused, let's say, processes. But we can see that kind of plateau towards the end there, where there's thousands of ideas and opportunities to innovate and really capitalize on efficiencies within your organization that would not be actioned simply because either you cannot devote so many resources to that, or there is no off-the-shelf solution. and naturally that pushes people to look for their own solutions, whether it's making use of available tools such as which are not really built for that specific purpose. So the Power Platform is where they step in. So the Power Platform is there to really provide simplified app development and really at a greatly reduced cost. So the main facilitator of the Power Platform is it allows people to build applications, workflows, and reports really quickly based on low code or no code experience. You also remove the dependence on highly experienced or highly technical teams, and where the applications and solutions become owned by the business users. So your stream owners, your process owners, your subject matter experts, for example, are the ones who can build and keep and maintain in line with your changing requirements over time. And that would, of course, greatly reduce the pressure on your IT teams as they would step back and become more of a facilitator around the platform, just ensuring security and general strategy is upheld, whereas it's actually your business users driving that development efforts forwards to meet their own requirements. Given that the Power Platform is also a cloud-based solution, if provided you have a central data storage mechanism for your solutions, that enables extended reach. So certain components of the Power Platform allow for custom experiences and also allow for different device usage. So they may run on webs or on web browsers, they may run on phones and tablets, and that will allow people to actually interact with the same data away from their desks. So whether they're completing site audits, etc., they can still interact with their same work identity out in the field and still not be dependent on returning to office to complete a second part of their work responsibilities. And finally, the major other point is it's a consistent experience. So it's consistent for your app users, for your app developers, and also your administrators. It all fits onto one seamless platform where they'll understand they worked with it before, and there won't be any drastic changes or upfront investment of time to learn new systems and their ways of working. So as a Microsoft partner, we've seen numerous fantastic opportunities to kind of apply the Power Platform in really numerous ways, where it kind of really shows off the diversity that the Power Platform can accommodate. So for example, of course, in light with more of the recent world events, but a lot of people, a lot of organizations now are looking to return back to the office. And so this idea of a booking app to facilitate employees marking a certain date that they will be attending an office. And then this allows us to ensure capacity is not exceeded, and also allows for us to trace attendees based on date and essentially contact tracing in a certain fashion. But the real standout of this was the highlight of the Power Platform in this case was the fact that the quick turnaround. So we were able to stand up an application in the 3 to 5 days range. So where we went from conversations and ideas all the way up to deployment and go live in a 5 days range. It's really fantastic to see that kind of speed of development and turnaround to meet business requirements almost in real time. Another great example is using the Power Platform for invoice processing. So if you receive documents of a certain structured nature, you can use AI models on the Power Platform to extract certain values which you've trained beforehand. And then, for example, you can increase the searchability of such files by tagging, introducing metadata tags against these files to increase searchability. But on the flip side of that as well, you can also start to look to introduce downstream business reporting. So you can start to identify trends by, for example, in the case of invoices, who the supplier may have been for which value and which date. And you can really start to bring your data to life. So even transforming your unstructured data into structured. I think a great example for this webinar is a self-service online portal. So if we have data which should be and can be publicly accessed, publicly visible, with the Power Platform, you can create a portal to allow external access, or, for example, either the public or just to come in and then really view records that may be publicly available, or if not, they can also come in as a role. So data can be shared with certain, for example, identities or email accounts, and they could come in and view only records that may concern them, or maybe they only should have access to. And this kind of can reduce, for example, requests for information queues and really alleviate that kind of workload, which introduces a bit more of the automation side of things. And of course, looking at the complexity of these things and the rough estimations, these are kind of the bare minimums to get started. And based on your complexity, based on your requirements, that will drive how much effort, almost in a linear fashion, how much effort would be required to implement those. Moving on to automated data actions. So we see a lot of use cases where we integrate existing software or existing systems, business systems, to talk to one another, and with the main core focus of preventing rekeying of information across systems by people. It's completely it's an avoidable task which can really save a lot of time in somebody's day, and the complexity can, as you can see there, it can range from low, where you can set up an automation within minutes, really, all the way up to months of effort, based on your complexity, based on your requirements, and how many processes may have to come off a certain data action. Another great example is conversational bots. So again, very similar to the portals, you can reduce the amount of attention or effort required by your organization to upkeep with interaction with the wider public. So whether it's, let's say, again, information requests, for example, or a reduction in call queues, that could be achieved by providing a tailored conversational service to your end users or to your external users, to actually not only retrieve or ask about certain pieces of data, but also act on those pieces of data if appropriate. So really, again, using those kind of the power of Power Platform to capitalize on certain opportunities to remove manual workload where it's not fully necessary to be achieved by a human being. And finally, a great example, I think, which I think can be commonly found across organizations of various sizes, is the concept of spreadsheet templates, emailing templates out to numerous people, and then receiving those templates back with data completed, collating those into one central data spreadsheet, and then drawing your own conclusions. So the Power Platform, it's not only can you use certain elements of the Power Platform to really streamline certain features of your service offering, but really you can bring in an end-to-end solution that will help you with all of the the journey throughout of your business process. So and we'll touch on this a bit later. And now I'll pass over to Mark to kind of take us through a bit of the Microsoft Power Platform components. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Edgar. So we've heard a lot about some really great use cases, some really great scenarios you may want to look at in terms of how the Power Platform can help. But let's get into it, right? What is this Power Platform thing we're talking about? What's underneath? What are these components? I've got about 10 minutes. So I'm going to ask for my able team just to help keep me on track for time, to make sure I don't overrun. I'm sure you've got some questions in the meantime. I can see the question box is empty, so please feel free to jump in. I know it's virtual, so it's not as interactive as we would like, but if you have any questions about anything you've seen Edgar present so far, jump into the chat. For the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go a little bit technical, not super technical, but high level technical, which is talking about what the Power Platform is. So when we talk about the Power Platform, we normally talk about it in terms of 4 main components, but all up, we look at it as a set of solutions, which we refer to as our low-code platform. So by low-code, we mean it's simple enough for power users, end users like yourselves, hopefully on a call like myself, who maybe understand business processes, who maybe understand the challenges and want to be able to be part of the solution and fixing them, but maybe don't necessarily understand how to code. This is where this next suite of tools becomes really powerful and really useful, because it allows you, given your IT policies and your governance, to get stuck in working with great partners like Intelogy to help you with your solution builds. The first one I wanted to start off with then, if we look at these four main components, is Power Apps. Power Apps then is the most popular part of the platform, I would say, straight after Power Automate. And this is what we use to build those end user apps. So apps that sit on somebody's machine, on somebody's device, that allows them to either capture information, view information, or perhaps edit or update information. So again, really, really great for those scenarios where you just have a little bit more that needs doing. You just need a solution that helps you update information, put information in, and in our example, because it's low code, it doesn't require you to know a lot of coding in terms of, like, say, .NET or Visual Studio. These are apps that you can build in a matter of days and weeks, as opposed to months. The other great thing about these Power Apps, they do come in various flavors, but I'm going to specifically speak more about just the Power App, is once they're built, they run on all platforms. So it's ready to go on your mobile device, it's ready to go in terms of your web browser, it's ready to go on the other devices that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily think Microsoft would make apps easy to run on. So by that, I mean you can get it in your Android stores, you can get it in your iOS Apple stores. So you're not just doing this for something that works internally, you've now got something that actually you can use outside, or in this new hybrid style of work we're currently experiencing, which requires us now to have some of these apps a little bit more closer to where we work at home, or a little bit more personal to how we work on our personal devices or work devices. And Power Apps is great. It's infused with all of the technology you hear Microsoft speak about so much and so passionately about, such as AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So that means you can now actually leverage the devices as part of the app to do really clever things, such as use the camera, things like object detection. So think about being able to build a Power App that, you know, uses your camera to take a picture of an object to see what that object is, or in a really great public sector example, to do some forms processing. So it may be I have a receipt or I have a form that I want to capture. So remember, I said these apps are great for capturing, reviewing, and reporting information. I can use my phone or my device, take a picture of the form, application, receipt, have that information processed in the Power App, some AI run on it to grab some information out, and then do something in the back end. This, again, is an amazing change of and turnaround of things, because it's something that was built very quick and very easy, and it's put the power in these end users' hands. If I was to tweak a little bit more to, say, the local government or public sector example, think about apps, as I mentioned, you can use for capturing receipts, or maybe even your citizen-facing apps. So an app to capture things like potholes. Imagine being able to build an app that you then make externally facing, that people could use and then leverage their camera or location in this example to then take a picture, excuse me, of a pothole that pops into your report a pothole system, that then hits your customer service desk or your facilities desk, so they can start going on to manage that. So this is a really great use for Power Apps. So again, it's that canvas visual style of building apps that may run on a mobile or tablet device, or could easily run on a desktop machine as part of your browser. The next really big area then, if again, looking at those four key areas, is Power Automate. I refer to Power Automate as our workhorse of the platform, the part of the platform that does all of the heavy lifting. And in terms of heavy lifting, I mean automation. So helping us with those repetitive, redundant tasks that we hate doing, that we can now model and automate. And again, very similar to Power Apps, this is low code driven. So you're given a visual interface to help build this. And I'm hoping you can see the example on the right-hand side, where you can see this is more of a flow chart, where you can say, I want this to happen first, then this to happen. And actually you can branch out to actually have conditions. So Power Automate is absolutely amazing for those repetitive tasks, those mundane tasks. I'm not going to say so much integration, but I'll say it's great for moving data from one system to another system as part of the 400 plus. Edgar and I was talking about this earlier as part of the prep, how we could illustrate this, and it's a shame we can't quite get this to be visually represented for you here, but of course that's where we'd want for you to get back in touch. But there are almost 400 pre-built connectors that Microsoft have helped publish to get you started. And those connectors are literally helping you connect to other systems. So they don't have to be Microsoft systems. This is not the Microsoft of old. We play very fairly and friendly now with our frenemies. So you can connect to SAP systems, Oracle DBs, you can connect to other SaaS, so by SaaS I mean software as a service platforms such as Salesforce, dare I say it, MailChimp. But what I'm trying to kind of help articulate here is those connectors make that low code piece even easier. So where before we would have had to rely on developers to script plugins and manually code this for us, you can jump into the connector store or the list of connectors for the type of platform, software, or even data store you're trying to connect to. So it also connects to data stores, and actually now start using this Power Automate to automate not only the movement of data, the updating of data, the triggering of data, and even the management of a flow. So again, a really great example maybe, I said to you there, we use a Canvas app to build an app that allows us to take a picture of something. Using AI, we can use that camera then to identify the object, or maybe do some forms processing. So by that, I mean pick out the fields on a particular form. This is then the great bit in terms of where Power Automate comes in, because Power Automate, you know, the heavy lifting part of the platform, the doer, can then do that repetitive task we hate doing, which is perhaps put that into another system, type that into an expense form that says, this is the date, this is how much I spent, this is what I need to do. Power Automate can take some of that, if not all of that, away from you, and then automate and do very intelligent things downstream as part of that. So again, in that expense scenario, not only would it then take those fields, it could then put it into a system for me and maybe nudge my manager to say, hey, Mark's done his expenses, it's underneath the £50 threshold. We're pretty happy to auto approve this for you, but we're just showing this to you just in case if you wanted to have one more eye view over it. My manager can hit approve, and in terms of a process that maybe took 2-3 weeks, depending on where you are to get your expenses paid and into the system, has now probably been dropped into a matter of days, which is a really great example of how we can begin to leverage the Power Automate. And you'll see as I talk about the platform, quite a lot of the platform in terms of that Power Apps piece, the next pieces I'm going to show you, do heavily rely on Power Automate as that workhorse engine for them. As I mentioned, it's great at working with systems that already exist. I don't necessarily like the term integration, but I do like the idea of saying it can move data from one area into another area. And a very, 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 very good example of this, I'm sure we're all very aware of in public sector, is where we have systems that are not internet facing or maybe don't have any APIs. So APIs here is how they connect to one system or connect to the outer world. This is where Power Automate would be great at bridging that gap. As I mentioned, it has those 400 connectors pre-built. If not, this is where our partners, our amazing partners like Intelogy can come into place and work with you to say, okay, yes, the Power Automate can get us this far and the Power Platform can get us this far, but for this legacy system, let us help you just maybe a small bit of code just to create that integration that all of a sudden now takes this monolithic legacy old application that before couldn't talk to the internet or before couldn't give you the whole idea of having a mobile app or an app that's on your tablet device, now into the modern world systems of doing things. Moving slightly away then from the Power Automate. So again, I spoke about Power Apps from that being able to build an app in a matter of days and weeks, not months. That's very visual and interactive, and underneath having Power Automate to do the automation and the remedial work. We then have Power Virtual Agents, which we refer to as an intelligent virtual agent, not so much a chatbot. Chatbots are they're cool, they're amazing, but they're pretty two-way. You know, you ask a question, you get an answer back. With Power Virtual Agents, why we refer to them as intelligent agents is because yes, they can do the basic conversation flows. You ask me a question, I give you an answer back. But as I just spoke about in terms of Power Automate, they're given extra ability to actually then go and do something. Power Automate gives them that doing, that actioning piece that allows them to say, hey, you've asked me a question, can I automate something, be it update your details in another system, pull back information for you, perhaps trigger off something in another system. So now it's not just a very basic conversation of, oh, I want to find out some information. I can go as far now as perhaps using the Power Virtual Agents canvas, which you can see illustrated on the right-hand side. Again, what you see is what you get kind of canvas layout, so not so much code, giving you this ability to really map out a flow of a conversation. We can bring in Power Automate to then connect that Power Virtual Agent, say, to a legacy systems, a revs and bends systems, a pothole systems, a reporting system, so that these end users who are having a conversation with the bot can actually have things happen or actioned on the back of it. And very similar to how I mentioned about the Power Apps being available on multiple devices, web, as well as phone, it's the same thing with these Power Virtual Agents. Not only can you have them standalone, you can embed them now in Teams. If anyone on joining the session is aware of Microsoft Teams, you can embed them in Power Apps. So that's taking a virtual agent and actually putting it in an app so somebody can access it. Or you can deploy it to your already existing estate of websites, intranets, or somewhere else. Finally, then, in terms of those 4 key components, we have the Power BI suite. I'm just waiting for my page to catch up with me on here. And for me, I refer to Power BI as yellow Excel, or Excel on steroids. So all of the great bits you know and love about Excel in terms of how you create reports and dashboards, all bubbled up and boiled into our business intelligence suite, which, very similar to Canvas apps, is very interactive, very visual, and designed to give you much more deeper insights through the power of AI. So again, giving you the ability to not only drill in, but see trends, pick up analysis, and maybe if I'm outside of the traditional data team or business analyst teams, ask questions. So that's something that a lot of people don't always speak about when we talk about Power BI, but that's just being able to jump into a Power BI dashboard. If I carry on using potholes reporting as an example, and say, hey, show me the most concentrated area, or the area we have the most reported potholes in. The Power BI dashboard will reload, give me information that's pertinent, and then allow me then to go and act on that information. And the great part about Power BI, as I mentioned before, is it plays very well with its siblings in the Power Platform, if I use that terminology. So very similar to how I said I could have a Power Virtual Agent embedded inside Power Apps, I can have a Power BI dashboard embedded into this app. I can have a Power BI dashboard embedded into Teams, or having it standalone as part of maybe a website, or as part of maybe we're tracking our SLAs in a particular area of our public sector organization, or maybe our resident-facing services. But it's a great way to bring the entire solution together to give you more of an addressed solution. So I started with Power Apps being that great way to build apps fast, to solve what we sometimes refer to as that last mile of end user needs to capture reports or edit information. I spoke about using Power Automate to help automate some of that heavy lifting alongside a Power Virtual Agent if you wanted to use it. And now we're saying we can bridge that with the end piece of that continuous analysis and intelligence that helps us improve that solution we're offering. So in our example then, when we look at the whole situation, when we look at the whole thing, we see them all as working with each other. Yeah, they're powerful alone. I gave some really great examples there of how we can use these different components alone or in silo. But when you bring them together is where you really do see the ROI, so that return on investment, not just from a financial point of view, but from a productivity point of view. In this example, we love the idea of single store, with Dataverse being our single store platform. So by single store, I mean an area you can then put all of this information into to continue to help your organization benefit from a shared data area, from shared AI, from shared machine learning. But we also understand that sometimes the data needs to stay where it is and maybe instead be integrated through the use of those connectors I mentioned in terms of Power Apps, or maybe through the use of custom connectors to connect to systems that don't previously exist. The data itself, in terms of storing, is where I said we get access to all of that amazing AI and machine learning. And I'm hoping for a lot of you on the call today, you already have elements or small access to some of these areas as part of your Office licenses, be it E3, E5, E1. And I would definitely implore you to get stuck in and have a look at how these can potentially help you. I only had 10 minutes. It was just to wow you and give you a bit of an example. But I'd love to now hand over back to Edgar, who's going to talk a little bit more about some use cases and how these components come together moving forward, especially now we're working hybrid, and some really great quick wins those of you on the call could look at as great examples to test this out in your organizations.
Fantastic, thank you, Mark. Yeah, so as we discussed before, Mark gave us that breakdown of components of the Power Platform. We mentioned that office attendance booking application, and really, well, here it is. We're using Power Apps for the front end interface, and you can see here, it will run on web browsers, tablets, and also in the mobile experience, all the same app. And as Mark touched upon, it's also inside of Microsoft Teams as well. So that will allow for easy access, common access, a common point to access these applications at, and ease of visibility of it. We also use Power Automate for creating those records, but as the record is being created, to make sure that the capacity of the selected office is never exceeded, etc., just to make sure that data is always intact, and the data is always within the confines of the design application scope. But in summary, it's just simply a access from anywhere device, an application from any device with a simple user interface, and really, as it says there, you can really build and extend as you require it. And it's something which we, as Intelogy, offered to our, any kind of organizations that may be interested. As within an hour's window of deployment, we can have this solution up and running for you inside of your own environment as well. And also another example which we touched upon just before the Power Platform deep dive was the fact around project analysis, and more about the spreadsheets, i.e. sending them out, retrieving them back in, collating that data. So it's actually it's a real case study that Intelogy has undertaken, so a piece of work that we delivered earlier this year. And we used a series of Canvas apps to control, for example, active projects. We used a series of Canvas apps to provide contextual access to data. So, for example, project managers entering to give their ratings against their projects. Those applications would only show the projects that they owned. Therefore, they would not be polluted or just kind of distracted with any other projects that may not be of their concern. A really focused, simple design. All running on the Dataverse backend. So Dataverse is that cloud storage main mechanism under the Power Platform, and that allowed for the data to be centrally stored on the cloud location. And we utilized automated workflows with Power Automate. So what those workflows did was track completion statuses, send appropriate reminders to the affected people of, hello, could you please finish off these reports as they are becoming due. And again, once again, given that storage mechanism was a central cloud storage database, it allowed for then Power BI to come in, hook in, and completely remove the necessity for manual data collation. So the collection of data was streamlined and kind of directed out more directly to the users and less from the process owner. Automated workflows to make sure the process ran smoothly, and Power BI reports just showing the outcomes of the data collected, and really helping that process owner spend more human valuable time understanding what may have occurred, what's to change, rather than undertaking these manual and repeatable processes. So in summary, it was just a cohesive and simple user experience, greatly enriched reporting, so organizational level, and also introducing the ability to report over time, so changes over time as well, and really makes reporting and ability to make decisions off the back of that data much more accessible. And of course, we have a dedicated section on our website for similar case studies, so please feel free to check them out there. So before getting started with Power Platform, there are a few things to kind of raise and consider. One of them being licensing. So as Mark lightly touched upon there, with your existing Microsoft 365 subscription, you may be entitled to certain services under the Power Platform under what's called seeded licenses. So these may be, an example may be a Canvas Power App interacting with a SharePoint list, or interacting with Power Automate, interacting with, for example, your Outlook inbox. So kind of keeping Power Platform within the Microsoft 365 sphere is likely to be already included under your licenses already, but standalone and further extensions of the platform itself would incur premium or additional licensing for those services. So model-driven apps under Power Apps or connecting to external data sources outside of the Microsoft 365 sphere, connecting to SQL databases, etc., would require additional premium licenses to account for that accessibility. Just to touch upon maintenance, so the Power Platform itself is maintained by Microsoft, so things like uptime, security, all of that good stuff is maintained by Microsoft, so therefore removing that element of ownership away from you, where you don't have to worry about those things, and you as an organization can focus on building applications and automation that really streamlines your processes and increasing the value that you can drive as an organization. So just there, your users and app builders are the ones who become responsible in maintaining the actual applications and features, so and also keeping them up to date in terms of in line with your business requirements over time as well. And as we had previously mentioned before, your IT teams kind of take a bit of a step back and become facilitators, a bit more like guardian angels, where they ensure security is upheld and strategy is also followed, but they do not really get hands-on with development of these applications and automation. So finally, governance and security is also a thought, and we'll touch upon that in the next slide as well. But it's just thinking about who would you like to be able to create apps? How can the organizational data, so things like either your unique SQL databases or data stored in Dataverse, can that interact with social channels in any way, shape or form, and thinking of policies to create before rolling out the use of Power Platform out to your whole organization, and whether you need any form of automated either approval processes or just handover processes. So for example, if people would like to, permissions to create applications, or whether, say, a leave process, how do you handle the ownership and transfer of ownership of applications to new users, for example. So that's a good thing to keep in mind before kind of diving in headfirst with the Power Platform. So yeah. And finally, these three main points we believe are kind of the real ways of setting that strategy before proceeding with your Power Platform adoption. So we wouldn't say sit there and dwell on it and really kind of perfect it. No, but I think it's really worth thinking through these three main areas of what your end goal is, so your strategy and vision, who's responsible for what, how are you going to, what kind of controls are you going to introduce for the platform and its use, and also how are you going to upkeep the kind of enthusiasm and technical levels, not technical levels, but the capabilities to develop and build on this platform in a low-code nature. And once I think we believe you kind of covered those things off, I think the best way to get started is piloting and refining your experiences from certain pilot projects. So if you identify a certain department, a certain business scenario, which you would like to address with the Power Platform, those provide great experience points to then use as almost a bit of hindsight in going into new, potentially bigger application builds or automation, etc., just to kind of really good tasting and just starter kit essentially to then drive further directional decisions on your journey with the Power Platform. So once you kind of thought about that, there's not much stopping you. If you're on Microsoft licensing, Microsoft E5 licensing, you're already nearly there. So considering, of course, what we discussed before, as long as you have strategy, your controls thought about potentially in place, there's a large number of free materials available for your organization to start learning, start building. So there's official Microsoft documentation, learning paths, and there's a significantly sized community around this area, including blogs, videos, forums, where 99% of your questions will definitely be found in there. So it's really a rich community, really supportive, and very easy to find answers to common business problems actually. And naturally, of course, if let's say you don't have the resource at the time to cater for that, you can always get in touch with Microsoft partners who can design, build these low-code solutions tailored to your needs on this platform for you. And what we as Intelogy also offer is what we call empowerment as a service, where we can assist with your strategy and first steps, so your decision making before you get started. We can then support your users through the training and learning cycles, and then actually once your users begin to build your applications, we can support them with build maintenance activities, advising on best approach, best practice, or if something breaks, investigate together and then really come up with solutions and kind of advice for them to follow to avoid that in the future. And naturally, we can always look to analyze and see further improvement opportunities for automation within your organization. And finally, that moves on to, for getting started with the Power Platform, is the one-day workshops that are Microsoft endorsed. So there's Microsoft endorsed public events run by qualified Microsoft partners worldwide, which provide a great starting hands-on experience for your users to actually learn about the different components of the Power Platform, what they do, how to build them, and get them up and running in the fastest possible time. And that's a great way to get started for your users. And we as Intelogy also, in partnership with Microsoft, run a variety of our own in-a-day events where we kind of look to understand your specific requirements and your specific context situation a bit more carefully, and just kind of tailor these days more in your context to really address any kind of certain areas you may require to cover off in a bit more detail, any suggestions, etc., or just really take you through any kind of questions you may have around the platform, certain elements, how to build, how to maintain, etc. We're kind of there to help you cover it all. So taking that all into account, it's we have reached the end, and I would like to thank you for attending. Thank you for Mark for also joining me on this webinar. And yeah, if any of the previous slides, anything got you thinking and you would like to reach out, please do. There's our contact details, and we'd love to hear from you. And just one final note is, of course, next week we have the final session of the free for the UK government and healthcare sectors run by Rob Bath, and that's about managing public records in Microsoft 365. So be sure not to miss that. It should be a fantastic event to attend as well. Great stuff. So I think we can leave it there then, unless there's anything else, Mark.
I did see a question from Andrew. So Andrew's question was in regards to, can approval work on a Power App basis, or once someone has a license, can someone build any apps they want? If the latter is their central oversight, oversight of what is being built to ensure app builders comply with our standards and policies. Edgar, I know on a few slides back you were talking around Center of Excellence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that would fit into Andrew's question here around governance and some of the app building processes.
Sure. So the first part of your question concerning approvals, it's yes, you do not need additional licensing to manage approvals within, let's say, a Power Automate flow. So the way it could work is your Power App could trigger a certain Power Automate flow, which would include an approval within that flow to run and wait for an approval. And that, depending on the data you're interacting with, but if the data is within Microsoft 365, it's unlikely that you will require additional licensing to facilitate that. The second part of the question about touching on to ensure standards and kind of governance around what's being built in which environments is, as Mark touched upon, Center of Excellence Starter Kit. So this allows you to deploy this kit into your environment to monitor any new creation of applications, any new creation of automation, etc. And essentially, you can set up certain flows, ironically, certain flows to then reach out to app creators or automation creators and advise them. We have, for example, we have noticed you have created a new either application, let's say in this environment. Please make sure that this application is in line with our certain policies and procedures, and essentially you can it's kind of, again, comes hand in hand with that nurture and educate point here as well, where it's a bit of a loop, really. Everything kind of slots in together nicely, because it's you as an admin would have oversight of what's created, who's managing the ownership of that application, etc. But you can also set up automation for your admin experience as well to make sure that's enforced as well consistently.
So I hope that's helped answer your question, Andrew. So yes, to the approval, and out of the box, Microsoft give you a Center of Excellence kit. Naturally, it's quite a basic kit, and this is where, you know, having some great partner involvement engagement can help, because they can share with you some best practice. Edgar there talked about some controls, monitoring you can put in place, automation using Power Automate, the workhorse of M365, as I mentioned. And then naturally, because it's Microsoft and it's part of the Microsoft ecosystem, it very, very well sits in natively with compliance and security. So if you're lucky enough to be a customer who has access to Microsoft security and compliance, all of the regulatory controls in terms of GDPR, in terms of data loss prevention, in terms of risk, insider risk and risk assessment, all plugs in as well. So by that, I mean, if someone's trying to build a dodgy app to download everything out of your organization, if you have the kit installed or if you have the security compliance turned on, you'll be notified. I hope that answers your question, Andrew. It seems all good, and I'll see if hopefully the team can follow up in the main chat. Those are all the questions I could see, Edgar.
Brilliant, thanks, Mark. And yeah, any
so
questions?
I have a quite team or shy bunch, but please feel free. I think Edgar was just about to mention it, to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. If any kind of questions arise, please do reach out. We'll be happy to kind of answer them in a follow-up blog post if necessary. So fantastic then. I think we can end it there. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you again shortly.